Hey guys, Anthony Curran here. Today I'm going to talk to you about how to buy a home. So, this is a super complex, far reaching topic, and what I'll probably end up doing is making a series of videos regarding different aspects of purchasing your first home. I'm assuming most of you are going to be looking at buying your first house, so this will hopefully be a guide that'll help you with that. So, there's a couple of things to figure out. First and foremost, we need to figure out what your credit score is like. Now, if you're not aware, a credit score is basically um, a way for lenders to see what kind of history you have for repaying loans that you've taken out, for using things like credit cards wisely and not spending more than you can afford, things of that nature. So, like I say, first and foremost, we need to figure out what your credit situation is like. The easiest way to check your credit is probably to go on a website I use a lot, both for people that I help with their personal finances and for my day job. It's a website called creditkarma.com. If you've not heard of it, it's a really great tool. Basically, what it is a website that monitors your credit for free. They do what's called a soft inquiry onto your credit, which means they don't pull your actual credit, but what they do is they look at your credit history. So um, basically, it's a way for you to look at your credit without getting your actual legitimate credit score. For example, when I went on Credit Karma, it said I had one score. I went to the bank and told them I had that score. They did a hard pull where they actually looked at my credit report, and it turns out I was about 80 points higher than they said. So while the actual score number is not always super accurate, Credit Karma is a great tool, especially if you are just starting out and you want to see what's on your credit. The other cool thing, while I'm thinking of it, Credit Karma will also tell you if you have anything like in collections, maybe something that you didn't know about it. For example, when I pulled my credit in order to apply for a mortgage for the first time, it turns out I had a $750 medical collection that I never knew I had. So obviously, I went and paid that, took care of that, and then I came back showing the receipt, and the bank was a lot more happy to work with me, and it made things a lot easier. So, depending on how your credit looks, we have a bunch of different avenues to go down to get financed for a home. If your credit is generally, I think, like 580 and above, or maybe it's 630 and above, somewhere in that neighborhood, most conventional loan programs will start to open up for you. Obviously, 720 and up is really good credit. That's when you really start building up and getting lower interest rates and getting better deals, and things start getting a little bit better for you. But definitely the first thing we need to do is check credit, and then we need to choose a lender. So there's a lot of different ways to choose a lender. um, Generally what you can do is what I call shopping for rates, where you go call different banks, credit unions, that sort of thing, and just ask them what kind of interest rates they're looking at. um, I wouldn't give them your credit, your social security number, and have them pull your credit. The more times they pull your credit, the lower it's going to get. I don't know if you realize this, but the more times your credit gets pulled and you don't get a loan out of it, when other banks are looking at that, what they'll do is they'll say, well, they got their credit pulled 35 times and none of those other places gave them a loan. Why is that? What's wrong with this person that they're not getting approved for a loan? So basically, it hurts your credit score to have multiple pulls. That's kind of the psychology behind it, and I'm sure there's a lot of other mumbo jumbo in regards to that, why it hurts to pull your credit so many times. But like I say, don't let them pull at every single bank you go to. Instead, what I would recommend is maybe have it pulled one time. You can also go online, get your free credit report once a year. You can do that. I think it's freecreditreport.com. You can go on there, get your credit report, and then I would bring that in if you want to print it out, if you want to email it, whatever. Show different banks, credit unions, lenders, whatever, and see what they say in terms of rate, that sort of thing. Now, obviously, some lenders will not take that. They'll say, no, we need to pull it ourselves in order to make sure that it's accurate or whatever. Cool. If they don't want to give you exact numbers, look at somebody else. Now, generally, in my experience, you have two different mainstay conventional lenders, banks and credit unions. So the difference between banks and credit unions is that credit unions are uh, non-profit organizations, which means they're tax exempt, which means generally they save more money and can therefore offer lower interest rates. Now, this may be different for different banks and credit unions in your area, so I certainly recommend shopping around and finding that out. But I looked at a bank before I talked to the credit union I wound up getting my mortgage through. The bank got me approved, but the interest rate was about 3 points higher at the bank than it was at the credit union. Now, 3 points doesn't sound like a lot of money, but when you look at a 30-year mortgage on a house, 3 points is to the tune, it could be tens of thousands of dollars, depending on how much house you're going to buy. So again, I'm going to make a couple more videos. I think I'll make a series about buying your first home. Um, but step one is run our credit, find out what our credit score is like. Obviously, clean up things on our credit report if they're on there, things that we didn't realize or may not have gotten around to paying off, pay those off. Step two is shop rates, compare lenders, and get what I call a pre-approval, which is basically you go in, you show them your credit, they say, yep, as long as everything stays the same with your job history, your credit score, your payments on things, as long as everything stays the same, we'll give you the money when you find the house that you want. Now, step three, of course, is find the house you want. So there's a lot of mumbo jumbo about what you should do, what you shouldn't do. I recommend this. Find out how much you're pre approved for, and then go maybe 20% less than that and look around at houses in that price range. And the reason I say that, too often people buy as much house as they can afford or more house than they can afford, and then, God forbid, something happens where you're out of work, you get laid off, you get into an accident and you can't work anymore, something like that. Oftentimes people have now set themselves up for failure. They've bought more house than they can now afford, and then they lose the house, their credit score goes down, all sorts of terrible things happen all at once. They might get a repossession or a foreclosure, which is where the bank takes the house back and kicks you out. So there's a lot of reasons to do it, but I say if you can get approved for $100,000, look in that $70,000 to $80,000 range. Just save yourself the headache and heartache. God forbid something should happen. So to review, we've run our credit and cleaned up things on our credit. We've talked to banks, credit unions, lenders of all sorts of different shapes and sizes, and we've gotten a pre-approval. We've gone around, found a house that's in a price range we can afford. Um, we then make an offer on the house. Obviously, what I would recommend is having a home inspector go through the house. When we bought this house, my dad actually was friends with a guy who's been a home inspector for years and years, so he came to the house, went through a whole thorough checklist. He was able to tell me, what needs to be fixed immediately, what doesn't, that sort of thing. And I think I paid him like $500, easily the best $500 I ever spent. So, get a home inspector to look the house over, and then based on what the home inspector finds, I used that in my personal experience in order to negotiate a lower selling price for the house, which the buyers, or rather the sellers, agreed to. I was the buyer, obviously. So that's another key aspect of doing this. Um, One of the other things that I can tell you is find a real estate agent that you trust. That can be a really tough thing. But obviously, if you have friends that bought a house or family members that own their own home and they recently bought, ask who their realtor was, and maybe you can go through that same person and have a good experience that way. And of course, depending on how old you are, you're gonna know somebody who's a realtor. I mean, it's one of those jobs that you throw a rock and you can hit a couple of people that are real estate agents. So definitely worthwhile to look into finding an agent that you like. Um, but that's definitely another aspect of it. So if you've had your credit pulled, gone through a lender and gotten a pre-approval, found the house you wanted and made an offer, gone through the home inspection process to make sure everything was good on the house, and then renegotiated if it wasn't. Basically, what you do now is a process called closing, and that's when your agent makes an agreement for you with the selling agent to say the buyer is going to buy this house from the seller, and then they send the paperwork into the bank or credit union or lender. That lender processes things through their back office. That can take a couple of weeks. And then basically you all together come down to a lawyer's office, sign the paperwork, and transfer ownership of the home. So I was able, let me see if I remember how we did this. We started looking for a home in probably January of 2017. We found the house that we liked probably by April. We looked at a couple other places, and unfortunately, the one that we really wanted to begin with had been sold by the time we went to put an offer in. So we found this place probably in April, and we started the process around the middle of April to do the closing. It got done around the end of May. We were actually leaving for vacation when they told us that our closing date was going to be the following week, which was June 6th of 2017. So we went in. I think it was a Tuesday, if I had to guess. We went in, signed the paperwork, and that afternoon we started moving stuff from our old apartment into the house, and then we started doing renovation, and we've kind of been at it ever since. So we've been here about 9 months now, and it actually worked out really great for us. The rent on the apartment was $675. The mortgage on this house is $199 a month. So we're saving $400 a month. And instead of that money going to our landlord, who was a really nice guy, don't get me wrong, but I'd rather have that $400 going into my bank account instead of his. So I think I will make a series of videos highlighting aspects of this, but I wanted to get at least one overarching video talking about the different steps to buying a home. And like I say, I'll make a video for each individual step and go in depth with that a little bit more. I hope this helps, and hopefully I'll have a good, strong playlist about this here in a little bit so that you'll be able to follow each individual step and hopefully become a homeowner yourself. All right, thank you very much. If you have any questions, please email me, anthonytcurran@gmail.com. And of course, stop on my website, anthonycurran.com. And I would really appreciate it if you would like the video and subscribe to my channel. Thanks again. Hope everybody has a great day.